Good afternoon and welcome to the ADH placement Q&A today. It's Friday afternoon and I'm pretty certain, like everybody else, they're looking forward to the weekend. So I'm Sam Dolby and I'm the placement manager for the faculty, and today I am joined by two of my colleagues, Faiza Sadat and Patrick McClintock. So the plan for today is we've had some amazing questions emailed into us already. We will work our way through those, hopefully demystifying some of the issues that students have when thinking about doing a placement. And if anyone watching today has any questions that they would like to ask us, we would love you to pop them into the live chat facility and we will pick them up after we've answered the initial emailed ones that have come into us already. So the first question that we get asked is, how do I apply for placements? I'm going to hand over to Faiza, who's going to answer that one for me.
Okay, hi everyone. So how do I apply for a placement? This is the question that the majority of students ask us, and it's really quite simple. You apply for the placement roles. So what happens is once a week, usually on a Friday afternoon, you'll get emailed out a job sheet, and on the job sheet are a list of all the roles that are currently live for you to apply for. You have a look, read through the job roles, click the ones you're interested in, and it should link you over to the job advert in My Gateway. And it'll have a little how to apply button. It tells you how to apply. Usually it asks for a CV and a cover letter. And we at the placement team can help you with that. So we will review your CV and cover letters for you to make sure that you have covered all your bases and you're putting yourself on your best foot forward and you're telling them exactly who you are and what you can do and what you can bring to the role. Once you're happy with your CV and cover letter, you get the link to apply and you apply for the role directly with their employer. The team is here to assist you through every step of the recruitment process for that role. So you don't actually apply for the placement module, you apply for the placement roles. And once you're successful in securing your placement, that's when we move you on to the placement module.
That is amazing, Faiza. Thank you very much. Right, so moving on to the next question. We always get asked, is there a deadline for applying? And I'm going to hand you over to Patrick, who's going to explain how the process works.
Thanks, Sam. Yes, so the simple answer to that question is that there is a deadline. Well, in fact, there are multiple deadlines and they depend on things like your status as a student, also can depend on things like citizenship as well, and whether or not you're undergraduate or postgraduate. So I'm going to go through each of those so that everyone's clear on it. So if you're a UK or an EU undergrad, so probably a student in your second year looking at placements, the deadline that you've got for getting your placement approved is the second week of October 2021. So that's the very last point at which you could come to us with a placement and we could get that signed off for you. It's a slightly different picture if you're an international undergrad. In that case, it's a bit of an earlier deadline, and that deadline is the 30th of June 2021. And the reason that deadline's a little bit earlier is because of Tier 4 visa arrangements. So we'd need to know things a little bit earlier in relation to your visa. And then for postgrad students, the deadline for finding your placement is the end of May. And then another important consideration when you're thinking about whether or not there's deadlines for applying is just being clear in your mind on the difference between sending off an application and then actually getting your placement offer approved by the university. So there's always going to be a time lag in between when you've sent off the application and when you get your interview, things like shortlisting. So if you're sending off applications that are really, really close to the approval date, there might be a danger that you've not heard back until the approval deadline has passed. So just keep that in your mind as well.
That's great, Patrick. There's also obviously company deadlines as well. So although we obviously have our own internal deadlines, companies have their own deadlines, don't they, as well?
Yes. Yeah. So if you're looking at positions that are advertised on My Gateway, it will always give you information about the deadline. So for a lot of the placements, the employers will give you a clear deadline, so that you have to have your applications in by a certain date. They sometimes add a time as well, so be careful of that. Other vacancies that we see occasionally will have more of an open deadline. So they might state that they will close the position once they've received enough applications. Another thing to be aware of that we spotted sometimes is, even if a company states its deadline as a certain date, they do occasionally close earlier if they've been inundated with applications and got a lot more than they thought they were going to get. They might sometimes close the position earlier. So it's always a good idea to get your application in a little bit in advance of the deadline, just in case something changes with it.
That's brilliant. Thanks, Patrick. Okay, so the next question we've got is, what support is out there for me when I'm applying? And I'm going to pick that up just based on the fact that the support that's available to you is my two colleagues that here with me today. So Patrick and Faisal are absolutely amazing. They're with you absolutely every step of your placement process. It could be that you book a one-to-one with them for your CV or cover letter check. It could be that they run a mock interview with you. And this is an unlimited service, so you can come back to us as many times as you want. At the moment, our office is also open 4 days a week, Monday to Thursday, and we are manning that on skeleton staff, but we are definitely here to support you. Patrick and Faisal take alternate weeks in Vijay Patel room 106 to do 15-minute face-to-face appointments. But throughout the rest of the week, they're offering online virtual appointments through Teams or over the phone. And like I say, they're absolutely amazing in being with you and supporting you throughout all of your different stages. On top of that, though, we've got a Blackboard community shell called ADH UG Placement Team, and that's found on the left-hand side at the bottom of your Blackboard home shell. And there is a raft of information in there. There's all our guides, there's the videos that you can watch, there's animations to help you with every stage of the recruitment process. So I highly recommend that not only you tap into Patrick and Faisal and their amazing amount of knowledge, you also head over to the Blackboard shell and just see what's available for you over there as well. Okay, so moving on to the next question. We constantly have debates about whether placements are paid or unpaid. So loads of people seem to think that unpaid placements are all unpaid. And Faisal is going to demystify that question for you.
Okay, so no, all placements are not all unpaid. So DME have a policy where we only advertise paid placements, and they must be paid at national minimum wage or above. So most, if not all, the roles are on the job sheet will be paid at national minimum wage and above. The only caveat to that is if there are any that are international. If you want to go abroad, other countries don't have a national minimum wage, so just be wary of that. They will be in their currency, and you can work out and see whether or not you can afford to live on what they're paying you, but you may also be entitled to some funding from different parts of the university to assist you with that. You can do unpaid placements and you'll still get the same support from the team if you want to go for an unpaid placement. However, we will always encourage you to go paid. You will be doing work that is relevant to not only your degree, but to the company as well. And there'll be staff at that company that will be doing the same work as you and they'll be getting paid. And we believe that just because you're students doesn't mean you shouldn't get paid for doing the same amount of work. Yes, you get the benefit of helping your degree, but you're still doing the same job as other paid members of staff, and you should get the same as them. You should get paid. So no, not all placements are unpaid. We advertise paid placements, and we would always encourage you to go for a paid placement.
Brilliant. I'm a big supporter that all placements should be paid. As you say, it is very much that they are doing the job of a full-time member of staff, and unpaid is criminal in my opinion. And I know a lot of people agree with that sentiment. You've mentioned quite a bit, the peer review, about the job sheet. But what happens if a student doesn't see a role that they're interested in? What's their options, Patrick?
Okay, so if you're not seeing any positions that you're interested in, especially at this time of the year, my first bit of advice would just be not to panic, to think about the deadlines that I mentioned earlier. So at the moment, we're very early on in the process, and there's a lot of months until any of those deadlines will hit. And the nice thing about the year is that placements will be advertised throughout the year. We never quite know what's going to be put out when, but from all of the previous years, we've seen that there are placements coming throughout the year. I would also, if you're not seeing anything that's appealing to you at the moment, it's a good idea to think about how open-minded you're being with relation to the placement. So there's always a bit of a trade-off. If you've got a placement in mind that you're interested in, if you can potentially widen your search as wide as possible, then there's going to be more opportunities that you can look for. So I would always keep asking yourself, are you being open-minded enough? Obviously, at the same time, you still want to do something that you're interested in, but it's good to widen your search as much as you can. Another really useful avenue that you can explore if you're not seeing anything that you're interested in at the moment is speculative applications. So that would be where you get in contact with an employer about working for them, even though it's not in relation to a position that they're advertising. So there might be an employer that you'd love to work for or you've heard about, and either they're not advertising anything at all, or the things that they're advertising aren't quite right for you. What you can do at that point is you can, with help from us, you can get in touch with them. We can give you feedback on, say, if you've approached them with a cover letter, we can give you our thoughts and ways in which we think that could be better. But you can approach them and give them a little bit of information about yourself, explain why you would like to work for them. And we found lots of students who that's worked really well for. If you're on a sort of creative or designy type degree course as well, you could look for ways to make your applications quite eye-catching, quite creative. As well as the speculative applications, I would also think about the channels that you're using for searching for jobs. So as well as the job alerts and searching on My Gateway through the search engine, other channels that you could use which could lead to placement opportunities are things like LinkedIn. We found a lot of students have found that LinkedIn has been a really good way of making contact with employers, and potentially that can lead to work experience or even placement opportunities. Also, using other kind of social media platforms like Instagram or Twitter is other ways to kind of reach out to companies who might not be advertising but you'd like to work for, and you've got nothing to lose by getting in touch with them as well. We've also got a guide that we can send through to students with useful resources. So this has got some other websites that you could think about. Websites like, you might have heard of Rate My Placement. That's another website that you can look at. Because of what Sam was saying about paid versus unpaid placements, you'll only see paid placements on My Gateway. And if you are interested or able to do unpaid placements, there are other websites where you can look for those opportunities as well, which might be useful. So I would, if there's absolutely nothing that's interesting you at the moment, I would start getting some speculative cover letters together. And it's a really good idea to book in with us to talk about those, because they can be quite tricky to approach if you've never done it before, and we can talk you through how to do that.
That was a great point there, Patrick, about how open you are and where you're willing to do your placement. It's really it's very important to remember that your placement year doesn't define the rest of your future career. It's so common that we see students come back that have either done a placement in buying and in actual fact they've realised that their heart lies in merchandising or design, or they've come back from a product consultancy type company and they've realised actually that's definitely not what they want to do. I know that we all think the same, that that's actually a really, really great learning curve for the student, because they'll still learn so many skills. And actually it helps to shape their career when they come back, as to where they look when they graduate. So that was a really, really, really valid point there about keeping your options open and thinking about where else you might be able to go and look at developing skills, or look at the industry, and is it the industry you want, or is it the skills you want to do? And I think that's really important when people are looking at the type of job that they're applying for as well. So really, really valid point there. Okay, so a massive question that pops up all the time. Why would I do a placement whilst I'm at uni, extending my degree to 4 years, when in actual fact, I can do it when I finished? What's your answer to that, Faiza?
You can. So talking to students who have graduated or that did do a placement and those that didn't, we've seen that those that do a placement, they do their placement year, it's a paid role, they come back, and their friends who didn't do a placement, when they finish university, that's when they're doing placements. However, when all of them have graduated, the one that did a placement is usually a step higher on the career ladder than that person that didn't do the placement. And there's several reasons for that. So when you're at university and you're doing your placement, you have the university there to support you whilst you're on your placement year. You have access to a placement tutor who can come out and see you if you've got any questions. You have the placement team and your placement tutor there to support you. Not only that, when you're on placement, you learn skills that you can bring back to your third year of your degree. And it might be skills that you've learned in terms of like pattern cutting or designing or a special software, but it's other transferable skills that you don't realize you've picked up that really, really improve you and your degree in your third year. Things like time management, problem solving. What do you do if you've designed this garment but actually it's not really working out with the materials you have? How do you work around that? And those are the kind of skills, that kind of work ethic that you learn while you're on placement, that the students bring back into their third year, that really pushes them forward. And it's really made those students stand out. And you can tell straight away when you walk in which students have been on and did a placement and those that just went straight into their third year. Their entire work ethic and the way they handle themselves is completely different. Even when it comes to the final kind of showcase graduate week, where they're showcasing all their final collections, those that were on placement have got the people skills. They know how to sell their products and they know how to talk to those employers that have come in, and they leave more of an impression. And those kind of skills are the skills you pick up without realizing when you're on placement. Like, how do you talk to someone and they're really annoying you, but you remain professional? Those kind of things are going to help you in your career. On top of that, the placement module is credit bearing at DMU. So you get 30 credits for the placement year. And what that means is if your placement year module is higher than any of your second year modules, you can swap them out. So you give your degree that little bit of a bump in terms of what grade you get. On top of that, when you graduate with a BA or a BSc in whatever your degree is, plus a placement year. A lot of our students, when they come back with a graduate job offer, or they'll come back and their employer will say, when you graduate, give us a call. And on top of that, like Sam mentioned before, it's a way for you to taste test the industry and the role. So you might think that merchandising is the way you want to go, and that's definitely what you do when you graduate. You do merchandising as your placement. Yeah, you see what it's like in real life, and you come back, you be like, actually, no, it's buying what I want. So when you are looking for graduate jobs, you already know where you need to look for. You're not applying for roles that you don't really want. You're applying for what you want to do. And when you graduate and go in that job, you're not in your first year of your career thinking, what have I done? Because you've already taste tested it, you know what it's like in the industry, and you know exactly what you want to go for. On top of that, you can also use your placement year to develop your skills further. So as long as it's related to your degree, you can do whichever placement you want. So you might be a fashion design student, but you know how to draw, you know how to sketch. You could do your placement in, say, buying, because you want to see a different aspect of the industry, and that's what you can do. You can use your placement year to develop your skills. You might be a product design student, and you might actually want to do a placement in 3D CAD designing, because that's the skill you want to develop more, and you want to see how does 3D CAD designing work as a role in the industry rather than being an overall kind of product designer. So you can choose it to develop the skills you already have or the skills you don't have, and see how that works. The placement year is there for you. You know, if you absolutely love your placement year, that's great. You're going to get so much from it. But if you do your placement and you actually realize that's not what I want to do, you don't miss out on anything, because you're coming back to uni, you're coming back to finish your degree, and you'll have all these skills and all these experiences that you can talk about on your CVs and in your interviews and things like that. So yeah, I will recommend doing a placement. Yeah, not just because DMU pays me to say that, but because I do think that there's a lot of benefits. You know, it's just an extra, if you think about it, it's an extra year in your university life, and it'll go by really quickly. And on top of that, if you go for a paid role, some of these are paid 16 grand and above. And let's be honest, who doesn't like money? So you'll come back a bit more flush than when you left.
I'm certainly in favour of that, Fazer. I don't know about you, Patrick, but definitely like money. That was such a great answer, Fazer. It was absolutely brilliant. And interestingly, where you said people have come back and they've had great experiences, I knew somebody who came back from their placement year and they thought that they'd learned nothing. They thought that they'd had a horrendous time. It was a complete waste of their year. 3 months later, they walked back into our office and they said, yeah, I've learned more on my placement than I thought I had. So even people that might not have the most amazing experience, that you are still learning the whole way through. I'm still learning constantly. And that's what your career is all about. So why not start that while you're in a nice little bubble of university, and we're here to look after you and help shape that going forward. But yeah, absolutely, students learn way more than they think they do sometimes. Okay, so how do I know whether I'm eligible to do a placement? Is my course validated? Well, that is a really, really straightforward answer if you are an art design and humanities undergraduate. As long as you are not studying BA architecture, you can go and do a placement year. For postgraduates in art design and humanities, it's a little bit more complicated. And rather than reel off all the list of the courses that can do it, what I would say is if you are a postgrad student and you are interested in undertaking a placement year, come and talk to the team. Drop us an email on adhplacements@dmu.ac.uk and we can tell you whether your course is validated or not. It would be a rather long and boring list if I just reeled them all off for you. And no doubt you'd be fast forwarding, rewinding and all of that to try to figure out if I've said your course or not. So undergraduate level, everybody other than BA architecture. But for postgrad, it's a little bit more complicated, so do come and talk to us. Okay, so we also have people that come and say to us, I know I want to do a placement. I definitely want to do one, but I don't know quite what I want to do, and I don't quite know where to start looking. So how do you handle those conversations, Patrick, when that's the first kind of opening gambit somebody gives you when they first walk into the office?
So I was going to say, if there's anyone watching who's in that situation right now, where they, like some said, they know they really want to do it, but they're not sure what to do, the first step I would take would be to book in with either Fazer or myself, so you can have a kind of open-ended chat about it. In terms of looking through the placements that are available, I would look through absolutely everything that's listed on the job alert emails that go out on a Friday. So not just the ones that are listed under your course, but also anything that's on that email has potentially got crossover with your subject. So it kind of links back to widening your search as much as possible. If you've not got any idea on the kind of roles that link to your position as well, another really good resource that you could look at that I'd recommend is the prospects.ac.uk website. They've got a section, I think it's called "What Can I Do with My Degree?" And for pretty much any degree you can think of, it's got a list of jobs that are linked to that degree that people will commonly go into. So that's another good way to get a bit of inspiration on potential positions that are linked to your degree that you might not have thought about. You might not have heard of them as well. So you can, if there's a job title and you're not sure what it is, you can click into it and see a little bit more information. Another really good resource I'd say to make the most of would be if you're having conversations with the academics and you've got a chance to kind of drop that in with them as well. They're potentially a bit of a goldmine in terms of industry knowledge. So they might mention some job ideas that you'd not really thought of. And if they know you particularly well, they might have ideas for the kind of jobs where you could really sort of get on well and enjoy that experience. I would also think about any contacts that you've got as well. So through friends or family, there might be people working in industries that you're interested in. So I would definitely make the most of that and speaking to them. But yeah, as a kind of as a starter, really, I would book in with one of us, Fazer or myself, and then we can talk you through that and give you some ideas.
Perfect. I think it's also worth noting that not all jobs specify your degree subject necessarily. So English and history students, it's very, very rare that you see somebody or see a job description where it will say must be studying English. Yeah, excellent English communication skills is always listed. So what advice would you give to somebody who sees a job that they really want to go for, but it's not specifying their degree subject as an ideal?
I would talk that through with us just to get a kind of, just to have a chat about whether or not there's enough of a crossover, because whilst it doesn't have to be directly related to your degree, there will still need to be some element of crossover to get it signed off. So I would have a chat to us about that, really. That would be the
perfect. And while we're on the subject of English and history students, this also translates across all of the design functionalities and all the performing arts areas as well. We often get comments from students in those areas that they want to be a teacher, and they kind of dismiss the fact that we offer anything for them. Now, Fazer, you are the absolute ideal person to answer this, because you also obviously look after education studies in health and life sciences. So what advice would you say to somebody who comes to you and says, I want to be a teacher, but there's nothing for me?
There is. I know our gut reaction is always like, oh, if I'm a dance student, there's nothing about dance teacher available as placements. But you're not looking to be a dance teacher, you're looking to be a teacher. So have a look at the teaching roles that we have, because what you're actually looking for are developing the skills to make you a teacher. So we've had roles previously with the Leicestershire Skip, where you go out and you work with a school, as it might be a teaching assistant or a teacher, and whilst there, we've had students who have brought their dance element to that role. So even though they weren't were not employed as a dance teacher. The student we had went in and had a little made a little dance club and got students involved in that, and then came back to DMU and did a performance. We have gap roles available as well. So for students that go on to like boarding schools, you're there to assist them whilst they're there. We also have roles. Companies have training departments and they sometimes have roles in there as well. So you're not being a traditional teacher in a school, but you're still doing that teaching element. What you're looking for is those teaching skills, especially once you graduate and you want to go on to your PGCE or your initial teacher training, or you want to go work for the skit. What they want is a minimum requirement of 10 teaching days in the classroom. Doing a placement year as a teacher, even if it's within a company or if it's as a teaching assistant, will give you that basis, and you've done an entire year. So when you're talking about why you want to be a teacher, you've got all these experiences you can draw from. So those are the kind of skills you're looking for. So just because it doesn't look like there's, say, a dance teacher or an art teacher there's still a teaching element. And once you're in that placement, there's nothing to say you can't develop a club, an after school activity or a break time activity on an area that is your passion. So you can always develop like a little art class and things like that. And those extra things you can bring to that role is what has made those experiences really good for those students. And also it shows the school or the head teacher, the teacher, exactly what you can bring. And I know that the students that have gone in to work for the skit and work at schools, those head teachers and those teachers have been impressed by what they've done, not just in terms of their roles, but what extra activities they have brought to the schools, and they've absolutely loved them. And then all the feedback we get from them is just praise, saying that, we expected just someone to come in to do the general teaching, but they brought so much extra. It's like you spoke about, it's keeping your options open. Just because it's not directly linked to what you think you want to do, there is actually a link there, and unless you try, you're not actually going to know whether or not it is what you want to do. And that's what your whole placement year is trying the role, trying the industry before you commit.
That's brilliant, Faiza. So that has brought us to the close of all our standard questions that we had emailed in already. I can see that we've had some comments in the chat though, so we'll head over to those now. So at what point should I know if I want to do a placement? With everything else that's happening, it feels too early to make a decision. So I'm going to pick that one up. I would say at this moment in time, having spoken to some of the large multinationals, they are already opening their placement roles. They are live at the moment. And they have every intention of fulfilling those placements. Companies have moved much more towards the virtual world, and they're much more understanding of how to onboard placement students into a virtual world now. That doesn't mean that that's the right avenue for every student to go down. And if at this moment in time it feels that it's too early for you, as Patrick said earlier on, you have until the second week of teaching in 2021, so roughly the second week of October. It's just about understanding what type of role you want to go into, because once the multinationals have kind of closed, they don't tend to reopen. So then you end up with the smaller companies opening, which absolutely offer a fantastic opportunity, and they will offer something very, very different to what a big multinational will offer. But placements are all about it being the right decision for you. And I know Patrick and Faiza, you'll both agree, you've spoken to students before who have been in this situation, not quite sure whether it's right, not right. And we never force or pressurize anybody into taking a placement or applying for placements. It's about the decision being the right decision for the individual at the time that they make it. So if at this moment in time it feels a little bit early, then it feels a little bit early. but I'd recommend booking an appointment with Faisal and Patrick, and they can maybe talk through some of those concerns that you might have.
And just to point out, you don't have to accept every job offer that you're given. So you can get through the whole process and you don't have to accept it. You can decline the offer and the team will still support you through it. So don't feel pressurized that once somebody's giving you a job offer, you have to take it. You can turn around and say no. If at that time your situation or your personal situation is different, or for whatever reason you can't take that offer, fair enough. We'll still support you even if you want to decline it. So don't ever feel pressurized into taking a placement opportunity if you don't really want that opportunity.
Absolutely.
I'd also say with that as well. Yeah, in terms of if you see one that looks interesting but you're not 100% sure about it, I'd also think about the kind of time lag between when you're applying for it and what the general situation and what the world's going to be like by the time you're actually offered that position as well. So the world could be a very different place to when you applied, maybe, which might be a month or two later.
Yeah, following on from what Patrick said, there are some companies, especially if you go kind of the speculative approach, where you can do some experience with them first. So you can actually do some experience over the holidays before you decide to commit on doing a placement year. So that is a different avenue if you're not sure or if you feel it's too early that you can explore.
Great points, both of you. Okay, so how does the placement work for PG international students? Does the course extend from 2 years instead of 1? So it's the same process for all international students, whether you're an undergrad on a 3-year visa or a postgrad on a 1-year visa, sorry. This is why there are deadlines in place for international students, and that's to enable you to apply to get your visa extension. So because this is a specific postgrad question, your window of opportunity to start a placement is between May and June. So you would do your first semester of teaching, which you have to pass at 60 credits at the first attempt to be eligible to do a placement year. You would then complete your second semester. You would then start your placement between May and June, take the full 12 months out, and then you would come back and that would enable you time to finish your dissertation / final major project, depending on what course you're on. But yes, you convert your 1-year visa into a 2-year visa. And the university and myself will help you through that process. For international postgrad students, your placement has to be in the UK. For international undergrad students, there is a bit more leniency and flexibility with where that placement is undertaken. Okay, and we have another question, which is, when should I start applying? And if I find a placement outside the job list, what is the procedure? Who wants to grab that one for me?
I'll take that one. So you can start applying from now. So you've got from now until next October 2021 to start and secure your placement. So you have just under a full year to apply for your placement. And if you find a placement outside of the job list, well done. You'll still get the same support. So if you would like us to review your CV, cover letter application, or you want interview advice or psychometric testing advice, we'll still give you that same support. Just come book an appointment with us, bring the job that you're interested in applying for, and we can talk you through the process. You'll still get the same amount of support. You don't have to apply for what's just on the job sheet. You can apply to whatever placement you want to apply for. Just make sure it has some relevance to your degree and it's something you want to do.
Perfect. Okay, so a couple more questions. Are there any financial expectations for a placement year? So firstly, your fee for the placement year. If you are a home or EU student, the fee is £650. And if you are an international student, so here on a Tier 4 visa, it's £750, and that is the same for undergraduates and postgraduates. And that fee is paid through your normal tuition fee payment structure. On top of that, you can apply to student finance. So if you currently are entitled to student finance, you are eligible to apply to them for some top-up funding. Everybody's circumstances are completely and utterly different, but on average, we say it's between 1,800 and 2,500 that you would get from student finance. Please bear in mind there might be some exceptions to that depending on individual circumstances. And then secondly, if the placement is not in Leicester and we would have to move, is support available? Patrick, do you want to pick that one up?
Yes, yeah. So if it depends, when you say not in Leicester, if you were moving overseas for a placement, you can potentially get some advice from DMU Global. If you are looking at placements that are in other parts of the country, we can give you our thoughts during one-to-one interviews and over emails as well. Another really useful thing that we can do is, if you're moving to a city and an employer where we've got students who are currently out on placement, we can quite often try and put you in touch with them so that they can give you advice about kind of how they handled sorting out their own accommodation and things like that, their advice, because a lot of the time that can be the most useful advice that you're going to get is from people that have really recently been through it themselves. But generally, I think it's fair to say the relocation side of it, we very rarely hear of that being problematic for students.
Because you pay your tuition fee of £650 or £750, whichever it is, you still keep your student status. So you can still apply for a few of the student perks that are available, so student travel and things like that. But also there'll be other people on your kind of course or where you're working that will be doing placements or may have a placement in an area where you'll be going to that you can talk to. So we've had a few students who just talking amongst themselves or coming to the workshops we put on, realize that they were all going to London and decided amongst themselves to move in together. It would be like you were looking to move to university or you're looking to move for second year accommodation. We can point you in the right directions and give you like contact details of students that have been there before, what they've done, what they've found. Also, sometimes employers that have taken on students consistently throughout the years may be able to offer you some advice on kind of where's the best location and things like that. Whilst we've been working in the placement team, the relocation aspect hasn't been an issue for many students. I mean, there's been the usual concerns of, I'm a bit nervous about going to a different city, but you can always go out and explore the city whilst you're there. If you get invited to a face-to-face interview, go a bit early or stay a bit later and explore the local area, or take a weekend to travel to where you're going and explore the areas, have a look at what's around and where you would potentially like to live.
The other thing I'd like to echo in terms of that is, for a lot of our students, they've already relocated to Leicester. So they've relocated once, therefore it's less daunting the second time. However, if you are somebody who lives in Leicester and obviously studies in Leicester, we fully appreciate that can be quite a daunting situation. And very often the employers are absolutely there to support you and help you. The one thing we cannot do is recommend accommodation. And the reason for that is we haven't actually lived in that area or lived in through that accommodation provider. And so obviously there'd be a complication if we recommended something and then there was an issue with the actual place that you were staying in. But we're absolutely here to support. And as Patrick said, I think it was, put you in touch with existing students if they are already on placement there. I'm not sure if anyone else has any other questions that they would like to jump in and ask. We're more than happy to answer anything around anything. I've been doing the job for 5 years. Faiza, I think you're 3 now. Yeah, old hat. Absolutely know everything and everything. And Patrick, you've done your first full cycle.
Yeah.
And let's be honest, it's been a full cycle in the most challenging of situations.
Yeah, what a year. What a year.
Yeah, so we absolutely can answer anything that you might possibly have that you might want to ask us. And if there are questions that you have that you don't want to pop on the chat, then as we've said throughout, please do book a one-to-one with us, pop into the office Monday to Thursday and come in and see us. So if there are no further questions, I am going to thank you for your questions. I'm going to thank you, Faiza and Patrick, for joining us today, or joining me. That made it sound like I was the royal us, and I'm certainly not that. So thank you for joining me on this chat today. Hopefully the people watching, whether they've watched it live or whether they watch it back at a later date, find the information useful. And I'm going to sign off the broadcast. So good luck, everybody. Oh, hang on. We have another question. Absolutely fine there. So generally, when do second year students start their placement? Patrick, over to you.
So it tends to be, it'll be after you've completed the second year. I think the earliest people tend to go out is around June. And then the latest that you could possibly really start would be October. But yeah, normally sometime over the summer is when the majority of students will start.
Perfect. I'm going to try that one again. Obviously, if there are any other questions, please do pop them in the chat. That's absolutely fine. But I'm conscious I don't want to be sat here with nobody with any other questions to ask us. So thank you again for your participation. It's been absolutely fantastic. Thank you, Patrick and Faiza, for joining me on this chat. It's been really, really informative all round, hopefully. And I'm going to close our broadcast off now. So thank you very much for watching.
See ya.
Bye.